What's up, savvy expats? Bonifacio Global City and Makati are two of the most prominent business districts in the entire country. Think about it like this. What Manhattan is to the US of A is what these two cities are to the Philippines. Both zip codes have the highest standard of living, both zip codes have some of the lowest crime rates, and both places have that good old moolah. With this in mind, which city is better to live in, Makati or BGC? Well, I'm gonna break this down for you so that by the end of this video, you have a definite answer for your next step to moving to the Philippines. Let's get into this. Alright, needless to say, both of these metropolises are particularly catered towards two demographics of people. Number one, expats earning foreign income like you and I, and number two, upper-class Filipinos that we can potentially categorize in the top 5% of earners in the country. These are the businessmen, politicians, doctors, and lawyers of the Philippines. And so that begs the question, what is the ideal budget to live in either of these cities? I've said it before and I'll say it again. I will never give you unrealistic figures just to tickle your ears like we've seen on countless other channels. Oh, live like a king on $500 per month. You know it and I know it. That's unfortunately complete BS. The unsugar-coated budget to live a high quality life in either of these cities, whether you're a single or you're with your family, is $3,000 per month. Now, I get it. You may be saying, Evan, that's a bit much, don't you think? And I understand where you're coming from, but hear me out. When I calculated these figures, I took into account what it would be like to live the highest quality life in the Philippines for a pretty reasonable budget. While not all of us may have a handsome pension of $3,000 per month, this budget does afford you a lifestyle of the highest tier in the Philippines within reason. Weekly massages, weekend getaways, shopping whenever you please, eating out daily to savor your local restaurants, and if you like nightlife, ordering drinks, so on and so forth. Now, you know yourself better than I do. If you're looking to live the full-blown retired lifestyle once you land here in the Philippines, then this budget will be applicable to you. However, if you're more of a simple guy, by all means, we have friends like JJ who we've brought on the channel who lives peacefully with $1,500 per month, which, mind you, is also in BGC. So my point being, just because I say $3,000 per month is a good budget to live on, which both you and I can agree, it doesn't mean that you can't live a decent lifestyle in these cities unless. At the end of the day, if you're coming to the Philippines to settle down for the first time, you're naturally just going to spend more, and I took account of those figures. I want to make sure that you're not just scratching by, but actually living life to the fullest here, which after all, you're also going to be in one of the most expensive cities in the entire country. Now that that's out of the way, how much does it actually cost to live in both of these cities? Well, let's start with by a mile, your heftiest expense when it comes to residing in Manila, your rent. Before I present to you these figures, please bear in mind that all of these accommodations are near or within the heart of Makati's central business district. So I'm talking only the most premium locations, affording you the convenience of being within the most upper class neighborhoods of Salcedo Village, Legazpi Village, and just across the street from the top tier Greenbelt Mall. Now, I completely understand if you don't have time to sit through this entire video and you want this information within your hands instantly. Rest assured, I put together a free PDF detailing the cost of living in Makati versus BGC, along with categorized links to rental units across both of these cities if you do plan on renting in Manila. The link to these figures and rental units are in the description down below. Now that that's covered, I found that the average studio in Makati City ran about 25,000 to 35,000 pesos in rent, which in dollars is a roughly $500 to $700 monthly. Meanwhile, if you compare that to BGC, you may find that the average studio unit will run from about $500 to $600 in rent within a decent location. So while they are around the same price range and BGC is a tad bit cheaper for the average studio unit, I did find, however, that Makati's units were slightly a bit more spacious and bigger, although still a studio unit. Now, I'm gonna be real. As much as we talk about BGC on the channel, one major caveat to this city is that a lot of the units that you'll find here are shoeboxes. Unless you're willing to pay some decent coin, only the relatively more expensive units offer Western square footage. And if a studio unit is too small for you, then you may want to opt for a one-bedroom unit. On average, a one-bedroom rental unit in a solid part of Makati City will typically start at 45,000 pesos and up. That's around a $900 monthly, but if you're staying at a higher end, more spacious development, that can easily range up to $1,800 per month. Comparing that to BGC, you can easily find a one-bedroom unit for $700 per month, although very small. Now, if you're looking for bigger one-bedrooms within BGC, that will range up to $1,400 per month, near or within the heart of the city. And in terms of the two-bedroom units within Makati City, those units will typically range in rents from around 65,000 pesos up to 120,000 pesos per month, meaning that the quality two-bedroom units in Makati will typically start at $1,300 per month and range all the way up to $2,400 per month. Meanwhile, in BGC, two-bedroom units typically start at $1,200 per month and range all the way up to $2,200 per month. Now, while BGC may sound slightly more affordable than Makati in its rental prices, two things. Number one, most units in BGC are slightly smaller in square footage compared to Makati. I think this can be attributed to Makati being a much older city compared to BGC. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, BGC was only built within the recent 15 to 20 years, so it's a very new city, and a lot of the developments here are completely new. And secondly, there's plenty of rentals here in BGC that run for a lot more in rental prices compared to Makati. For example, it's a none of our surprise that a two-bedroom residential unit at the Shangri-La in BGC will run you about $6,000 per month for its rental price. So my point is, while these are the base figures according to my research, rental units can be found both very cheap or much more expensive in either of these cities depending on the development that you take a look at. All in all, Makati is a tad bit more expensive for rent if you're staying within the heart of the business district. But bear in mind, Makati itself is much bigger in its city radius compared to the tiny bubble of BGC. So in Makati, if you want to stay outside of the heart of the city, you can stay within the surrounding areas of Poblacion, Pio del Pilar, or Chino Rosas. And that's outside of the high-end shopping district of Makati City, which is a lot cheaper than BGC. And so I'd say that rental prices in Makati fluctuate a lot more depending on the area that you're in, just because its radius is so much bigger than BGC. Some areas around Makati are very expensive, for instance like near Greenbelt Mall, while other areas are much more affordable outside of the heart of the city, although it is more like traditional Manila. Meanwhile, if you compare that to BGC, this district as a whole is relatively high-end and similar in price all throughout the city. And aside from rental costs, we also have to factor in association dues. Depending on the condominium that you choose to stay at, your association dues will vary, but on average, $150 per month is nothing out of the ordinary. Then you also have utility bills, which will run about $200 per month in both of these cities. These utility bills would include water, internet, and electricity. Alright, moving on to our next category of expense, we have food, which honestly will vary depending on your personal food taste and preference. If you're one who likes to cook at home, of course your food costs will be much lower. But if you like to eat out often, try the different restaurants, go to different bars, then of course your food expenses will be much higher. All in all, if we're going to compare your food expenses in BGC versus Makati, they will be quite similar just because in either of these cities, there's such a wide range of cuisines, eateries, diversity, and price points. However, I will say in regards to food, Makati distinctly has one thing that BGC doesn't, which is Jolly Jeeps. Essentially, Jolly Jeeps are local food stalls on the streets of Makati that serve very affordable local Filipino food, which is especially catered towards the young corporate workers or guards within the area for them to get a quick bite to eat. And so we can say that the average expat who enjoys eating out often, going to bars and trying out different eateries will spend around $600 per month in either of these cities. Now, the next expense that we have to factor in is entertainment. This, once again, is completely up to you. Whether you're a minimalistic person who enjoys simple walks in the park, or just a coffee within a cafe, maybe you have a book with you, or you're someone who likes to visit the bars, clubs, get weekly massages, go out often, this particular expense will heavily vary depending on your particular taste. I will say, however, if you're someone who likes to go out clubbing and drink at the bars with your friends, your entertainment costs will easily hit $1,000 per month in either of these cities. And at least comparing Makati's nightlife scene versus BGC, it's a lot more diverse in Makati for what it has to offer. Because we have to bear in mind that situated in Makati is Poblacion, the nightlife capital of the Philippines. Although many consider Poblacion a red light district, there's a wide array of bars and clubs here. So in Makati, you really have everything. In this business district of Makati, you have high-end bars and high-end cigar lounges offering you the best whiskeys and wine. This is more catered towards those who want to do social drinking, while you also have cheaper bars catered to a completely different crowd of people who intend to just party. And if I'm going to be transparent with you guys, in Poblacion, a lot of expats want to do a lot more than just party, which is why you'll find a lot of paid activity, if you know what I mean. So just be aware of that if you're going to Poblacion. And so, in a nutshell, Makati's nightlife scene is very diverse and it varies in price. So once again, Makati's nightlife scene, you can find high-end whiskey bars, cigar lounges, and places to drink some wine. But at the same time, you can find cheaper, more affordable places where people like to get their partying on. Meanwhile, in BGC, most of the bars and clubs as a whole are a bit on the higher end. For example, Xylo at the Palace, Dr. Wine in Burgos Circle, and Revel at the Palace are all upscale clubs to party. While there are more affordable and cheaper bars in BGC, the nightlife scene here is lively and relatively on the same price range all throughout the city. Now, the majority of your costs will be fairly similar in both of these cities, but one category that BGC far takes the cake in is in your transportation costs. As mentioned earlier, Makati is much bigger than BGC in terms of its city radius. So although some areas in Makati are walking distance, if you want to get from certain points of the city to another, you're better off just booking a Grab or taking a taxi. Meanwhile, in BGC, this city is much more compact, pedestrian friendly. Most, if not all, parts of BGC is less than 15 minutes walking distance from each other, so everything here is walking distance. I kid you not, just this morning I ran the entirety of BGC's radius within less than 40 minutes. And so, needless to say, your transportation costs in this city will be 0 to none compared to Makati. Alright, now that we've covered almost every area of expense within both of these high-end business districts, what are the actual differences in costs between the two? Overall, the majority of your expenses in both of these cities are relatively the same and will completely depend on your own personal circumstances. The main areas that really do differ, however, is rent and transportation. Makati is slightly more expensive in its rental prices, specifically if we're talking about living within the heart of the central business district. For example, if you're right across the street from the upscale mall of Greenbelt, or if you're in the upscale neighborhoods of Salcedo Village or Legazpi Village, it will be more expensive for its rental prices. If, however, you're staying outside of the heart of the city and you're staying in like Poblacion, for example, then your rental prices will be significantly lower than BGC. And also, bear in mind, when it comes to accommodations and condominiums in Makati, the square footage will be quite a bit bigger than BGC. On the flip side of the coin, BGC, being a pedestrian-friendly city, has little to no transportation costs. In Makati, however, your transportation costs can range from $50 to $100 per month. At the end of the day, Makati and BGC are two of the most premium and expensive cities within the entire country, with the cost of living not being vastly different from one another. And so there you have it, savvy expats. That is a basic rundown of the cost of living in Makati versus Bonifacio Global City. Along with the free PDF, we also have an in-depth guide to seamless relocation to Bonifacio Global City, linked in the description down below. In this guide, we simply cover everything you need to know about BGC, such as the rental units here, the attractions, and navigating life within this metropolis. And so thank you for watching, savvy expats. It was a pleasure, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.